Good morning, everybody. Welcome to our Facebook Live VATRE Prop A session. This is an informational session. Ask your questions, type them in the comments. We will get you your answers. And the answer people are right here. Superintendent Dr. Christie Whitbeck and Deputy Superintendent Steve Bassett. Steve, love the shirt. So let's get started.
Oh, and I voted too, so yeah.
Love that more.
Well, I'll just officially welcome everyone and just let you know that we're really happy to have this opportunity to just really answer questions that come in, not planned, just from the heart, from the facts, and that you can also direct people to as a future resource. So with that, I'll just turn it over to Steve to kind of share some information, and then we'll just open up to any thoughts that are on your mind.
Okay. All right, so Dr. Whitbeck, I'll let you go through the beginning of this after I get the slideshow going. Okay.
Well, as you know, Proposition A is what we're talking about. And just as a reminder, this year our theme, Choose to Care, which falls under the Know Your Impact. This is a picture of a little boy at Hunters Glen Elementary and one of our police officers being a mentor. Just so many amazing people in this district, and that's what this is really all about. Just a few reminders on the facts. We're at over 80,000. We're actually 80,250 right now. That's the highest in the history of Fort Bend ISD. We want to continue to be a destination district. And in the last accountability, we were at or above the state and the Houston metropolitan area, Region 4, in all tested subjects and grade levels. So that's something to be proud of. And just one other thing to highlight this year, because there's a lot of focus on workforce and there needs to be, but here's some facts that I think are really relevant. At Reese, we've doubled our enrollment this year at the Reese Center, and we offer 18 pathways, but I wanted to share with you that 2,585 industry certifications were earned. And this is important at no cost to the parents. We also had 88 students in the very first graduating class of our early college high school at Marshall, and they received an associate's degree, again, at no cost to the parents. So all of these amazing things, and now we've even added veterinary medicine, are terrific options for our kids. They're amazing choices. But Fort Bend ISD absorbs the budget of those things in order to make it available at no cost to parents. So as we think about our budget, I wanted to share that because that is a very important factor. And these are the top 5 universities and colleges that our students attend when we look at our graduates. You see that we have Wharton College and Houston Community College because we know that's a very great option for many of our kids. And then you can see U of H, who's doing nothing but going on the rise in its tier ratings, and A&M and UT. So exciting to see that our children are going forward and making a difference and choosing these as our top 5. So why are we here and why do we need to know about Prop A? It's about our teachers primarily. 70% of this entire package is about our teachers, and these are our teachers of the year from last year. But we have amazing teachers in this district, and we need to recognize them and also, in my personal opinion, elevate this profession much more than it has been elevated in the last decades. And so this is also part of that, and you'll see that as we explain a few slides. So I'll turn it over to Steve now. He likes to talk about this part.
All right, thank you, Dr. Whitbeck. So, whenever you go into an election, people see, what happened in the past. So in the very recent past, we passed the bond, and we're appreciative of the public support for that, 66%. And those funds were definitely needed for the growth that we have, and also rebuild the schools and all kinds of things. And so, but people think, well, you just passed this. Why in the world could you possibly need any more money? And so on that side of the buck, that side of our on the slide, the right side of the bond election, you can see in the middle we have 2 tax rates. We have 2 different funds. So we have the debt side and the bond side, which is on the right. That's the right. 27 cents is that tax rate. And then on the other side, that's where we're talking about today, our maintenance and operations. In that bucket, those funds are used to pay for teacher and staff pay, materials, utilities, all those other things. And so the funding on the debt side can only be used to pay off bonds, and bonds are used to build schools and HVAC, fix HVACs, and all that kind of stuff. By law, we cannot use any of those funds for the items on the left, for teacher pay, for safety and security, anything like that, just by law. So it's two different funds, two different kinds of elections. And so whenever you look at your bill, you probably don't see that we have two different tax rates, but we do have two different tax rates. That's the way things are set up by the state. And so we're talking about the on the left side. All right, so we did a lot with our budget this past year, and we balanced budget, 90-day operating reserve, and those two things are really important because it helps us maintain our AA plus rating that we have. Our rating is high, and that's the bond rating that we're given. All districts that have bond programs are given ratings. Our AA plus is higher than any of the districts around us except Houston. Houston ISD is similar. But more importantly, though, we were able to reduce our budgets by $40 million over the past 2 years. So, we've worked really hard to do that. This includes a permanent closure of two schools. We merged Briargate and Blue Ridge into one school, and Mission Bend and Mission Glen into another school. Two schools are closed now, Mission Bend and Briargate. Those will be rebuilt. I mean, we're going to be demolishing them in the next month or so. They will be rebuilt brand new and as beautiful as any of the campuses in our district. And but then Blue Ridge will not be open, and the Mission Glen will not be open. We've also reduced the headcount by over 300 FTEs, and 50 of those plus are in the general administration, okay, in the central office. And then one thing it's important to realize that even though we reduced the headcount, we did that without layoffs. We did not lay off anybody. Nobody got pink slipped. And even with reducing headcount by over 300, we still hired hundreds of people. Okay, we're the largest employer in Fort Bend County, and we have a lot of people to hire every year. School business is a seasonal business. There's always turnover. Our turnover levels are similar to other districts. We don't have high turnover in comparison. But anyway, we were able to do that without layoffs. We also absorbed the impact of inflation and a special education deficit within the current budget. We do get paid more by the state for our special education students, but not nearly enough. And the deficit for that is way over $30 million. And then inflation. Everybody on this call has dealt with inflation. We've had 14% inflation since the state last adjusted our pay per student. And so that's impacted us significantly. We did just completed the efficiency audit that was required by TEA. Okay, so that was good, and it showed that our revenue is below the other districts around us significantly. And so this election will help close that gap. But our work continues. E-team, Dr. Whitbeck and I and the rest of the leaders, we meet regularly, meet weekly, and whenever we have non-campus positions that are open, we talk about whether or not we feel like we truly need those before filling them. We're going to be working on a strategic plan that's going to be kicking off soon. And we also are going to conduct a cost savings audit to bring in an outside party to look further at ways that we can reduce our budgets. So here's really the main point, though, the main reason why we're here. If you look on the left, you can see all these districts there. The ones with the green arrows, they gave raises this past year. Spring Branch is the only one on that list that did not give raises, okay? But they were already competitive, okay? And so you can see that we're at the bottom. Our starting teacher pay is lagging the market clearly. We are 3,000 below Lamar, Aldine, and then when you think about Katy and Cy-Fair, I mean, we're still well below them, and so that's reflected in the graph on the right. Katy and Cy-Fair, they gave raises after the state did not do anything for teachers after the special sessions. They said, well, we can't wait any longer. We're going to give raises. And they had deficit budgets to do that. And also they have access to some state funds that we don't have access to. And we'll mention that more here in a bit. Lamar, they gave a 3% raise, and that was actually in the springtime. And they were able to do that just because of the growth that they have. They're growing now like Fort Bend used to grow, with thousands of kids being added every year. And so they put out there that they were going to do that. And so this is the gap that we're dealing with. And from a business perspective, and if those don't know my background, I've been in business at Price Waterhouse, USA, AT&T. I mean, I understand business. And from a business perspective, you can't operate a business like this when you have your main people that are delivering your product. Okay, and it is a product. We get paid based on enrollment, and our teachers teach those kids. And so we can't operate like this and expect to really survive as a business. And so that's really the main point. And then finally, yes, the state is in session. And but right now they're just talking about vouchers. I think at some point they're going to talk about increasing the basic allotment and teacher pay. But whenever they do that, they will eventually mandate a raise for teachers, counselors, nurses, and librarians. And that'll be for everybody in the state. That'll be for all school districts, all teachers. And so they'll all boats will rise, and this gap will remain. This election is the only thing we have available to us right now to close this gap. So even if the state does do something for teacher pay, it's not going to close this gap that we have with the districts around us. So how will we spend this? I mean, this is easy. There's only two things we're going to be spending on this. We're going to be spending this on compensation and spending it on safety and security. No pet projects. We don't see anything being left over. It's just going to be for these things. So from a safety and security perspective, 9% of this is to fund and have a uniformed security officer at all of our elementary schools. Right now, we have officers at our middle schools and high schools, and they're there right now, our own police officers, okay? We do have patrols right now that go to the elementaries, but they're not dedicated personnel that are there. There's a state mandate to have that. I got a question about that and said, you guys have to do this. I mean, isn't it misleading to have this in here? Well, no, the fact is this mandate is already in place. It started September 1st, and our board, we submitted the waiver to our board for them to approve, and they did, for us to give that to TEA because we can't afford to have this mandate. It was an unfunded mandate, and hundreds of districts throughout the state did the exact same thing. And so that's a mandate that we cannot comply with at this time for financial reasons. And so that's the waiver. And that's why we have this in here. Further, our point is that, we're going to use $2.5 million to contract with outside security firms. And then over time, we're hopeful because we're going to be increasing police pay. And you'll see that here in a minute. We're hopeful that we'll be able to hire our own police officers and over the coming years, and eventually be able to not have a contract like that and just have our own staff like we do now for the middle schools and the high schools. So again, going to the other side, 91% of this is revenue is for compensation. So let's get into the detail for that. So you can see we're going to be increasing the teacher pay scale. We're moving the whole scale up by 2,500. And then further, we're going to have a differentiated scale. And there's just another slide for that here in a second that I'll show you next. The counselors and nurses will all include get raises for 2,500, and then you can see the increase for police officer pay. I mean, it's hard to fill these positions. We have I think 12 vacancies right now, and finding officers is tough. The other higher amounts from a percentage perspective are you also have higher vacancies in classroom aides and bus drivers. And you can see the increases, the percentages for auxiliary and non-classroom pairs. And then all other eligible staff will be getting a 3% increase, which is the same as what Katie and Lamar and Cy-Fair did this past year. The raises will be effective for the whole year, and all benefit eligible staff will receive that increase. So our goal is, the pay that the teachers, the additional pay that the teachers didn't get in August, September, October, and November, that would be made up for them if we have a successful election on their December 15th paycheck. So it is going to be retroactive for the whole year. So here's a differentiated pay scale. I know Dr. Whitbeck is going to say some things about this, but you can see right now our scale is at the bottom there. You see the red with the dark markers, and so we do have a bigger step at year 5. Okay, but what we decided, and all the rest of the steps throughout the scale are $500. But what we decided is that what can we do to not just be competitive, but to give us an edge when it comes to recruitment and retention. Because in a market like this, when you have short labor, you want to be able to retain your employees. That's the most important thing. So look to see what we're doing here. We're increasing the step at year 10 even more, and then year 15 even more, and then again at 20, and then at 25, so that you can see where we're going to be the pay leader in those out years. And there's some reasons behind that. And it's a different philosophy. Dr. Whitbeck will get into that.
Yeah. Yes. And I'd like to just share that, we know that an experienced teacher is not always 100% guaranteed to be the strongest teacher, because we can have some rookies that are just golden and they're phenomenal for kids, and we know that. But by and large, my experience as a principal at elementary, middle, and high school is that there often and most often is a connection, and also to teacher leadership on the campus, being that department chair, that team leader, the one who will take on the additional responsibilities. So by doing this, we set ourselves differently. We are saying we value education experience. This year, when we introduced our new teachers, I asked for how many years stand up, and at the end, we had 20 people with 30 years or more. And we want to be able to attract those teachers. And so this is, to me, a game changer. Now, so let's say what Steve says is true. The legislation comes through and they say $2,000 for teachers. Well, then this would rise up just as everyone else's would. And so we would be able to be a lot more attractive to those that are in the profession and those that want to start. And I want to share with you a statistic that we just learned. 50,000 teachers exited the profession last year. And that means they retired, maybe they moved, maybe they stayed home with children, whatever the reason, they exited. And then 19,000 new teacher certifications were issued. So we have a huge gap in our state and really in our nation. And this has been real prominent since COVID. So I would just say to you, this is another way for us to address and to be more attractive, to keep our brightest and best, and then to get some of those amazing students into education.
Yeah, very important. It's very critical. And we know that the other districts around us will match this, and it may take them a little while, but frankly, I hope they do, because all kids, need experienced teachers and just more folks in the profession. So let's talk a little bit about the money. Our tax rate is low compared to the districts around us. You can see where we're at the $1.13. Our main peers, Lamar, Katy, and Cy-Fair. Lamar 11 pennies higher, Katy and Cy-Fair 16, 17 pennies. And they're so much higher because they have access to state funding that we don't have. They have some of these additional golden pennies, and I don't want to get too much into school finance and the complexities of it, because we could talk about that for a whole semester, and let alone just a few minutes. So again, they have some access to some revenue, and so the fact that their tax rate is so much higher does make a big difference. So look at our rate. Our rate $1.34 back in 2016. And so you can see how with the compression mandated by the state because of property value growth, how we've gone down from $1.34 to $1.13. Now we're going to take some credit for 6 of those pennies, because we did reduce our debt service rate during that time by twice, 6 pennies total, down to $1.13. It's really $1.13 and a half, but we're just rounding there. But the state is going to mandate that we go down another 18 and a half pennies, down to 95 cents. And so that decrease down to 18 and a half to 95, what we're asking is to bring it back to 99 cents, which is still a reduction. It's still a reduction of 14 and a half pennies. So how does that math look? So if you look at our total tax rate now, let's just round it to 99 cents. That's what our board adopted, a 99 penny tax rate, okay, which will be the lowest this district's ever had. We're going to collect $22 million locally in local dollars. And then here's where that state funding comes in, where I mentioned that Katy and Cy-Fair has. Because we would be getting some of these additional pennies, the state would be contributing $13 million in net revenue to the district. So, I mean, really, the state, if this passes, the state is matching every dollar that we collect locally with 59 cents. And you can see that's a huge portion of this total new revenue of $35 million. And that $35 million is what's needed, and it's going to be 100% on teachers and staff and safety and security. Now, I mentioned that the tax rate is going to be going down. It's going to be going down 14 and a half pennies. And between that and the increase in the homestead exemption, which also people are voting on now, the annual homeowner impact, even if we have a successful election, is going to be a savings of $1,000. Now, if it doesn't pass, it'll be savings of $1,100. The difference between those two is $108 or $9 a month. So full transparency, $108. But you're looking at a total tax rate decrease 14 pennies, even with the vote for. Okay. Now, if you are a taxpayer age 65 and older, this can have zero impact to you. And one of the things, if you have somebody in your life that is over 65 and does own property and pays property taxes, just check with them to see if they have the exemption, because it doesn't automatically happen. Okay, you actually have to take action. You have to, maybe pull a form off the website, or submit it, or go to one of those county annexes to apply for it. It doesn't automatically happen, but it does help relieve the burden on our senior citizens from school property taxes. Okay, well, we have the same crappy ballot language that we had last November. Okay, and and I got a question on this just today. This ballot language is mandated by the state. Okay, and so you can see on the right it says, ratifying an ad valorem tax rate of 99 cents for the district. It'll result in an increase 4.8% in our tax revenue as compared to the last year, and it's an additional 35 million. Well, what's the problem with that language? First of all, what does it not say? It doesn't say what it's for. Okay, what is the money for? It's pay for teachers and staff, armed security at all elementary schools. And then it also doesn't say that, hey, out of that 35 million, the state's going to contribute 13 million. That's the matching part. That state will contribute 59 cents for every dollar we collect locally. And so, we don't have the option as a school district to go above and beyond in the ballot language what the state puts. This is what the state says we have to use, and so it just is what it is. But if you are for having an increase in pay of teachers and staff and armed security, then a vote for is what you would put. We can't tell people how to vote. We just can encourage people to vote and explain what happens either way. So let's just talk about what happens either way.
Steve,
Yeah.
I want to just interject here. After voting, this morning and seeing the ballot very fresh, the county has 2 bonds, and in that they can say it's for parks, and another one it's for roads, and we don't get to say anything, which is a whole nother argument about why public schools are not allowed to do that. And so that's where I think it's just really important that people understand, because we're forced to omit that from the ballot. But you do have it in other places and other entities, just not school districts.
Right. So let's talk about, again, what happens if this doesn't pass. I think one of the things we learned last November when we had the TRE, it was confusing language, and also it was the first time our district never ever did this kind of election. That our public was used to bonds and seeing that on a regular basis because of all the growth we've had. But that TRE, VATRE was brand new, and it's a high turnout election, and so it was confusing. And so but one of the things we learned from that is that we didn't spell out what the consequences are. I mean, when people say no to something, they're actually saying yes to something else. So if somebody votes against this, that means they're saying yes to what? That means that our teachers and staff will not receive a raise. But further, when we talk about teacher vacancies, right now, we have over 100 teacher vacancies. We're the 6th largest district in the state. And again, 31,000 certifications fewer this year than the prior year. Dr. Whitbeck mentioned that stat before. And as the 6th largest district in the state, we're going to feel that. And this 100 vacancies that we have, it's similar to the other districts around us. We're not out of line with that. Everybody has vacancies. And so anyway, a vote no means you're okay with having potentially many more teacher vacancies. How many more? I don't know. It could be hundreds more. Okay, we just don't know. But put yourself in the eyes of a new teacher, and if you want to move to this area and you look at Lamar's pay, $3,000 higher than us from a starting teacher. Well, unless you're going to get free rent somewhere in Fort Bend ISD, why wouldn't you go to Lamar? I don't know. 3,000 is a lot when you're making in the 60,000 range. So anyway, the other thing that vote no means is that we wouldn't have the armed security at the elementary schools. And again, we're also saying no to $13 million that's on the table that the state has available to us. Okay, that's allocated to us, and that's money that Katy and Cy-Fair have that we do not have, and it makes it very difficult to compete with other districts around us. So that's what a vote no means. So now we can get into the questions, and if I need to go back to the slides, I will, but I'll take us off the sharing.
Keep them handy as you always do, Steve.
Yes,
We
ma'am.
have a lot of people watching now, and we have some questions that have come in. Again, as I always do, even if Steve addressed your issue or Dr. Whitbeck addressed your issue, I will read your questions. We'll get to as many as possible. Maria from Fulshire says, I'm confused why other neighboring school districts have higher tax rates and our tax rate is lower. That seems a bit unfair. Our district deserves better.
So there's a couple different things. Again, there's two different tax rates. The debt service rate, one of the reasons why our debt service rate is low compared to other districts is some of our debt management practices. We have the commercial paper program and variable rate debt. We have highly qualified people that manage debt, and I do think we just do a better job. Our debt per student is a lot lower than the districts around us, and that's why our debt rate is able to be lower than the other districts. The other districts also, besides potentially having a bigger debt service rate than we do, they have access to these other pennies that I'm talking about, these golden pennies and copper pennies that we don't have access to, that districts like Katy and Cy-Fair have access to. And so, and in our
Hey,
case,
Steve,
it's going
let
to
me
take an election to
clarify.
get that. Yeah.
So we don't have access because we have not passed a tax rate election, a VATRE, correct?
Right. Now,
Okay.
some may say, well, wait a minute, neither did Katy and Cy-Fair, but this is complicated. They started off with a higher tax rate back in 2006. When there was original compression with Governor Perry back in 2006. And so they've had the benefit of this extra funds since 2006. And so now other districts around us, I don't know them off the top of my head, but they've had TREs and they've gotten those additional pennies. But Katy and Cy-Fair, they had those access to those pennies from the very beginning.
Okay. Gladys wants to know or says, senior citizens are on a fixed income. Why should they vote for this?
It won't change theirs.
Yeah, if they have the exemption, again, that's why I talk about, you got to have that exemption. But the thing about it is for stakeholders in our community that do not have kids, I know people don't like to pay property taxes, and they don't like it when their property value goes up, when they, then they'll pay more in taxes. But they certainly like it when the property values goes up when they sell their homes. Okay. And so, the thing about it is, the reason why so many people have moved here and property values have gone up is because of the district that we have and all the great things that we provide. So many people around the world have moved to Fort Bend ISD because of the education we provide for students. And so if we're not able to do this and we have hundreds of more teacher vacancies, the quality of our district could go down, and in the end, property values could go down.
I would also add, I think to me, it's a moral imperative. I'm an empty nester now too. And even if I wasn't working in this district, I talk about this with my parents and a lot of my parents' friends. It is our responsibility to take care of the next generation. And I believe that, and I will always support school districts. When I'm 90, I will support school districts because we have to take care of the next generation. And I would also mention something that we haven't said yet, and that school districts have no other way to get money except for their enrollment to go up and for their attendance to go up. That's it. We have no other way. We have to go to the voters and then rely on what our legislators do. That's it. And so that's why I think is another reason that our senior citizens should support our school district.
Yeah, we live in this community. We're all in it together.
Let me just add one other thing, and I'm glad Dr. Whitbeck mentioned this. We've had a lot of property value growth, but what people don't understand is that we don't benefit from that property value growth. If we collect $1,000 more dollars, the state pays us exactly $1,000 less on the general fund side. I mean, that is the way it is. Our only when enrollment goes up or attendance goes up do we have more revenue. That's it.
Good point. And just very quickly, Steve, there may be people who don't know that exemption for 65 and over, that's called a 65 and over exemption. And does it freeze your taxes where they are? It doesn't mean you pay zero taxes.
It freezes your taxes, and it'll keep you at that level over the years.
Okay. Thank you very much. Deanna says, I hear a lot about teacher pay being increased. Could you tell us more about other employees?
Okay, yes. So there was a lot of detail on that one slide. I can get to it real quick, but all of our employees would receive a raise of at least 3%. But you can see the percentage increases for the others. But all the everybody on the teacher scale would receive 2,500 plus, depending on their years. Like if you're a 25-year teacher or librarian, it's going to be 7,000. But when you look at the rest of the employees there, the police officers, classroom aides and bus drivers, they have the highest percentages because of their the vacancy rates, and then you can see the percentages for the other employees. And the base, all employees would get 3%. That's the same raise that was out there for Katy, Cy-Fair, and Lamar this past year.
Okay. Thank you. Tracy from Sugarland says, what would happen if the VATRE doesn't pass? Specifically, I'm worried about safety at our elementary schools.
I'd like to address that one. We have the waiver already, and we won't be able to add the armed guards. I also don't know, Sherry, if anyone's written this specifically, but the state requires an armed personnel. Okay, so it could be a guard, it could be a police officer, it could also be a program called Guardian. And I want to share with that because I have a tremendous amount of respect for Chief Ryder and for Bart Rosebeer, who's over all emergency management for this district. And they absolutely do not believe that the Guardian program is an option for us. And what that really means is that you would have one person on the campus who is armed and that it would be not disclosed. And so let's say it's the fifth grade teacher, and that fifth grade teacher feels comfortable and is trained. Well, what's going to happen if something happens at the front of the building? Are they going to leave their class, go up there and handle it? So when they study that, they do not believe that is our answer. And so, and I respect them, and we're following suit, and that's why we're asking for these guards. And so that's what would happen is we wouldn't have them. We just simply would carry on like we are now. But we also, I'm going to be honest, we're going to have to cut in order to pay our people. Okay, we are going to have to cut in other programs. And when we cut $40 million, we did not touch class ratios. We did not put more children in the rooms. And we also did not cut any programs. And you saw at the beginning, I shared with you a lot of the extra programs that we have, the CTE, we have early college high school, we have P-TECH, we also have 6 academies. We have a lot of choices in this district. And what are we going to cut? Not to mention the athletics and the fine arts options. So we don't want to get to the student level, but we have to pay people because nothing happens for students without people in the bus, in the chair, and working for them. So this will be where it'll be very, very hard on Fort Bend ISD to keep the same level of options that we have now.
Okay. Erica says, if the VATRE passes, how soon would the community expect to see changes?
Wow. Okay. So the pay increase will be hopefully in the December 15th paychecks for all the employees. So anyway, I guess maybe the restaurants and the businesses, they'll see some activity there right before Christmas, but what we'll do though is we're already looking at, we will probably bring a procurement item because we, as a governmental entity, we have to go through a procurement process for when we spend more than $50,000 with a vendor. And so we'll have to bring an item to the board for contractors that we could contract with to provide the armed security. And so hopefully they'd be in place in the springtime.
Now, Chief Ryder says that by going with contracted guards, the beauty of that is you can use multiple agencies. So you don't have, we have 50 elementary schools. We don't have to find one agency that gives us all 50. We might get 10 from here, 15 from here, and we can make it work. And so that's an advantage. Whereas the police officer plan, which is also $4.5 million, it's more. There's a shortage of officers. You may even see out now Missouri City is hiring, the sheriff's department is hiring, Sugarland City. I mean, we're all competing for the same officers. So I think the security guard plan is an excellent option for us today, and we can get that moving immediately.
Also, I have family and some friends in law enforcement. It too is a profession that people are leaving.
Yes.
So the pickings can get slim. So that pay difference makes a difference. All right, Natalie wants to know what eligible staff are getting raises. Again, some of this we've covered, but we respect your time and attention. So if you ask the question, we're going to ask the question and get it answered.
And the answer is it's all benefits eligible employees. So that's our maintenance, our auxiliary, our bus drivers, our teachers, our principals, our leaders in transportation, everybody. The only person that's not is your superintendent, and that's great. But they're all going to receive something, and as Steve shared on that slide, a breakdown. So I think that's really important because this is something for everyone. Also, when the state comes through and historically, if they give a teacher raise, they lump teachers as teachers, counselors, nurses, and librarians. So if they say $2,000 or $3,000, it will cover them, but it never ever covers everyone else. And we have as many people in the everywhere else. In order to drive the circumference of the earth every day, we have to have a lot of people in transportation. We have maintenance. We have mechanics. We have a lot of people in technology.
Child nutrition.
Think about the IT department you would need for the largest employer in Fort Bend County. Child nutrition. I mean, you can go down the line. Extended day. It's everywhere. So we really want to take care of everybody because it takes everybody to really make an impact on our kids.
And on that note, what percentage of the money that would be generated would go just for teachers?
Yeah, so on the, that group of four, okay, because we have to look at it that way. That's the way the state looks at it. That is 54% of our employees, but 70% of this compensation is going to that 54%. 70% of that compensation amount is going to that 54%.
Okay. Kay wants to know, is the board planning on having this, she says, going to be on every ballot until approved? I think what she's asking, and Kay, feel free to jump in the comments if I'm wrong. If it doesn't pass this time, are we just going to keep asking for another tax rate election?
Well, the only time we can do tax rate elections is in November. So what's going to be happening next November? Well, that would be maybe the presidential election of all presidential elections with all the division that's out there and whatever else. So whether or not we would go and try to do one there really, I think, depends on what happens with the state and the special session. And then also, again, we're going to have to find cuts to fund close that gap with the other districts. And so it depends on what happens in that strategic planning process and whatever else. So we just don't know. I would say it's a possibility, and I wouldn't rule it out. But it's but it would be very hard to do that in a presidential election. And so, but eventually,
I want to add to that too. We took care of our district for several years in the bond. Okay, the buildings, the rebuilds, new restrooms, playgrounds, everything. So we're good there. If this passes, then I as your superintendent believe we wouldn't be going back to the voters for anything for at least 3 years because we've got a lot of money to spend in the bonds. And I think at that time it would be a bond, and it would be because the next set of chillers is failing or the next set of roofs need replaced and so on. So I think that would be our greatest thing, is to look at it from the other end. We don't want to be in the election business. It is just, as we said earlier, it is the only way that we have.
And this money is not a one-off.
No, it's continual.
This year.
This $35 million would be continual. That's why we're able to give that differentiated pay scale and keep it going, because of that $35 million we would bring in every year.
And just very quickly, because this is a question I've heard before, the $500 step that teachers now get, that increase, that goes away or it stays the same in addition to this more robust step?
The steps will still be in there. And matter of fact, our teachers did get raises this past year. We did the step. Okay, all the teachers got raises of at least $500. Some of them on that one step got 1,000, but only the ones in that year 5, for example. And so what we're going to continue to have a graduated scale as we go, but this time we're just going to have bigger steps on those 5-year increments.
Okay, Kimberly asks, if it passes, is the money just for 1 year? We just touched on that, but again, let's just reiterate for anyone who's just joining.
Yeah, these
Goes on.
raises, these raises are the gift that keeps on giving. That's the difference between the supplements. We did supplements this past year. Our teachers did get $1,500 supplements. Employees got 1,000. And so, but those are one-time supplements that we used some federal money to pay for that. Okay, and so some of the ESSER money, and so that's one time. These are salary increases that continue on.
And like you said, we've been leaving that state money on the table. This is an if-then thing. If you pass a tax rate election, then the state will kick in more than 50% of the money.
Right, right.
Okay. Janelle wants to know, what is the difference between this election and the bond election in May?
Yeah, so again, bond elections can only be used for capital things like building schools or rebuilding schools or repairing HVAC or roofs or buying buses. So that's what that bond election was for in May. And by law, we cannot use any of those funds to fund teacher pay or the armed security guards. We cannot use those funds. We have 2 different tax rates, 2 different elections. And so even though we were successful with that bond election and we're thankful for that, we that doesn't help us with teacher pay and the and armed security.
It's simplistic, but I like to say bond is buildings, taxes, teachers, taxes, teachers. Okay, yeah. Maria says, is the retroactive pay for everyone or just for teachers? Good point of clarification.
Yeah. All employees that receive the raise, it's for everyone. It is for the whole year.
And Steve, you said it starts at the beginning of your contract. Can you explain that? I mean, I know when my contract started, but I don't know anybody
so our
else's.
our fiscal year actually runs, it closes in the summer. So July 1st is when our fiscal year starts. So some employees are on contract year round. It starts July 1st. And then for, some start in July, some start in August. Pretty much everybody starts July or August, but it's when their contract starts. That's when the pay would be retroactive for.
And to reiterate, that retroactive pay would be on the December 15th paycheck. Okay. Maria has a second question. How close are we to offering better pay to campus paras, a living wage?
Well, I tell you, one of the things that we've certainly learned, and when you look at the numbers that we have out there, what we're proposing for our hourly employees, it's not enough. It's not enough. Okay. And, if we had added more to the tax rate, maybe we could have done it, but then maybe we would diminish our chances of passing. This is what we can afford right now. Okay. And it's a start. We're hopeful that if and when the state comes through, we're able to do more, but we know that eventually, because we're talking about these jobs, we have to compete with industry besides just competing with other districts. And most other districts have these minimum wages of $15 an hour, and we're coming up short. In terms of the bus drivers, I mean, they're going to be over $20 an hour now, but still, that's low when you compare, being able to go drive a truck for a company, for example. And so we have to increase those pay areas as well. But this is what we can afford now. Similarly, with regard to the substitutes, our substitutes aren't on here, and I've seen some questions about that, and another one I'm going to respond to this morning. Our substitutes play a key role in this, and we do value them. The reason why they're not on here is that our sub pay is comparable to the other districts around us. It is comparable. We're not out of line with the other districts around us, and so, but that doesn't mean we don't value them, and it doesn't mean that we're hoping that when the state does come through, I believe that all the districts, including Fort Bend, will increase sub pay. Okay, because substitutes are critical to the operations of districts.
And so just to make that clear, what we are hoping for from our legislators is an increase in what's called the basic allotment, which is per child. Right now, it's $6,160 per child. And so that hasn't changed since 2019 to address the inflation. And as Steve said, we're losing $30 million a year in what it's costing us to pay for special education children's services and what we're getting from the state. And that's a huge gap. So if the per pupil allotment goes up, then the district has the latitude to look at the district from a global standpoint and say, okay, this much needs to go into more special ed aids. This much can address our classroom aids, our substitutes. We'll have the latitude. And so that's the piece of the puzzle. So if you're listening to legislation, listen closely for per pupil allocation, because that is the critical part.
All right, thank you. Thanks, everybody, for sticking with us and for all your great questions. The next one is from Kim from Sugarland, and this is very basic and bears repeating as often as possible. Does a vote for Prop A mean yes?
That is correct. A vote for means saying yes to increases in teacher pay and the armed security.
Thank you for that, Kim.
Also, Sherry, I noticed today on the ballot, we are last. In the Fort Bend ISD, we are last on the ballot, Prop A.
So go all the way down your ballot when you vote. Thank you for that reminder, Dr. Whitbeck. Okay, Nakia Franklin. Okay, she has a little bit of complex question, but I think I see the meaning in it. She says, if Governor Abbott is taking money from the public schools to give it to private schools, referring to vouchers, aren't we at risk for losing more money if we vote to approve Prop A? Money is still being taken from us. How will this work?
So
these are
two totally separate issues. Okay, what's in place now, and even if you do have vouchers, these funds will be coming to our district. This 13 million that we could get from the state will come from our district. It's in law now, and that's the way that is. And I don't see that changing. I mean, they would really have to totally revamp school finance, and that wouldn't happen in a special session. It just wouldn't. If they do allocate some of the additional funds they have right now for vouchers, okay, I mean, that's money that we're not getting now. Okay, it's money that they could give us, but they're not. Okay, but that's a totally separate thing. Okay, we need these. A vote for does not impact the voucher debate at all. It doesn't impact how much money could be diverted to private schools or whatever else. It really only impacts, this vote really only impacts our district.
I would also say that, if you listen to the rhetoric about vouchers, it's all touted as choice, parent choice. And so what I would say, and I've been in some very successful districts, including this one as your deputy in 2013 to 2017 and back again now for 2 years as superintendent. This district offers more choices than any other district anywhere around us. When you talk early college, high school, P-TECH, academies, and vibrant, thriving CTE, just to name some. And so I would say that vouchers are a choice, but if we have to trim, then we may have to reduce the choices that we offer. And that's what we don't want to do. And that's for however many kids we have. We want to be able to have all these options. So
and we were all at our CTE Expo.
Yes.
Just last week on Wednesday. It was standing room only, you guys. And there's so many great programs there. And I'm always impressed by the fact that these high school kids can graduate with 2 years of college under them for free. No books to buy, no tuition to pay. And that's a wonderful thing that we can offer. So, yeah, it could get pretty real.
But I do appreciate the voucher question and the connection and wondering how all this works. And, Sherry, I think we would be willing to have a separate Facebook Live on vouchers. Like, what does that really mean to school districts like Fort Bend? I think that's a whole separate topic. And we certainly have our viewpoint, but we also have, some potential data about what happens what might happen that would be detrimental or what might happen that might not be.
I think that's an excellent idea. We're all here for it. Okay, Dorcas says, who decides the pay for paras? If teachers are getting 60,000, why can't the starting salary for paras be at 30,000? This is ridiculous, y'all. Inflation is on the rise, and the $1.50 proposed increase per hour is just not enough.
Well, I mean, who decides this? I mean, that's decided by the administration, and it's approved by the board whenever we make our recommendations to the board. And so, but we do that with information based on the market and how our pay compares to other districts and whatever else. Again, we know that these folks aren't making enough, and we would like to be able to pay them more, but unfortunately, this is what we can afford at this time. If this passes, if this doesn't pass, it won't be anything. And so there won't be raises for anybody, let alone, those who deserve it the most, like our hourly employees.
And I think that Steve mentioned something early on, and I think this is what we all have to remember. By this happening, should it pass, everything bumps to what has been listed on the sheet, the teacher graduated pay scale, the hourly amounts. So that bumps. So then anything else we do from that grows from that number, not the number that it sits today. And so that's the piece. Remember, it's all exponential. It grows with future decision making. And we do believe and know that our paras are at the top of our list. Okay, if you were to ask me and Steve, I think we'd probably have about 5 areas that we are the most concerned about, and that's one of them. So you at least know that if this passes, you go up some, and hopefully we can get some money from the state and increase that.
And just for our viewers who don't know what we mean when we say paras, what is that? And just a brief example of what they do.
So we have paras, classroom aides or paras, okay, paraprofessionals. And then also all the front office staff at a campus, for example, the school secretary and the receptionist and other staff like that, office workers, okay, those are all paraprofessionals, okay.
And they're paid based on their category. So, for example, if you are a para and you are assisting a teacher in a special education classroom, your salary is higher than if you are assisting, let's say, in a pre-K classroom. So it's dependent on the vacancy rate, the perceived level of difficulty. So if you're with some of our more serious special ed children, that takes a lot. And so there is some graduation within all of that in terms of the pay. But basically, a para is just like para means with the teacher, helping make a difference, and with the campus, helping make a difference.
Thank you. Thank you for all of that, Dorcas. And like Steve said earlier, we have to start somewhere. And like you said, Dr. Whitbeck, we start here and then we go up from there. Michael Lamb says, how will passing the VATRE benefit students?
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, the best, by having the best people. That could be the police officers or the security guards, the teachers, the paras, everyone. By having the best people that we can possibly surround our kids with, it benefits our children. And so that's why there's even that 3% for the people who oversee technology. Well, what about if the internet goes down? Okay, that's not good in the classroom. So we've got to have experts. We've got to have experts in cybersecurity, experts in how do you route the transportation, not just driving the bus, but what do you do when people are complaining about the routes? Well, there has to be leadership. So every single person that we can place in these jobs that are at the highest level possible, it benefits the kids.
Very good. Anonymous says, if 4 pennies generates 22 million, then lowering it to 98 cents cuts 82.5 million. Where has the 82.5 million been? I'm confessing I'm completely lost by this question. Steve, did you follow, and can you answer?
No, yeah. So the state had the largest surplus they've ever had, over $33 billion. Okay, they are putting $18 billion into property tax reduction. And that's happening in 2 ways. That's happening by making the school rates reduce their property taxes, their rates. So again, our rate is going to go down with a successful election, down 14 and a half pennies. The state is going to pay us more to make up that difference. But we're going down in what we're collecting in local taxes, and we're only being held harmless. We're not getting more from the state because of it. Okay, so you're going to get some back from the state, and our taxpayers pay less. So the state is making up that difference. I was asked by my wife last night, well, why aren't they reducing the rate for cities and counties? Well, they don't give revenue to cities and counties now, but they do to school districts. The state is responsible for public education. And so the state does fund public education throughout the state. And so the state determines how much revenue we get. And so they can determine whether or not we're collecting more locally or if they're going to put more money in. And so because they have this $18 billion, they're having all school districts reduce their tax rates significantly, and they're increasing the homestead exemption. And that's why, whether or not this passes or not, our average taxpayer is going to have a reduction in taxes of over $1,000. Okay, and so it's great as a taxpayer myself, to have that reduction. I think everybody will benefit from that, but we're not keeping that money per se. Okay, we're not benefiting from that. Our revenue without this election, our revenue is going to be the same as it was last year, even with inflation and the pressure to give raises and all that kind of stuff. I don't know
Steve,
if
I
I
love how
answered that or not.
you get crunked up when you talk about finances. Anonymous, that was so specific. If you, I'm going to do this because I know he's fine with it. If you want to have more information from Steve about this, you can email him at Stephen with a V .Bassett, BASSETT at fortbendisd.com. All right, we are about out of time, but we have one last question. This one also is from an anonymous commentator. They say upper management is why I will vote no.
Well, I'd like to
go
address
ahead.
that first. I've been told about a few of those, and all I can say is, first of all, it's your right to vote no, and so anybody that wants to vote no has a right to do that. But I think when we think of upper management, first of all, let's remember it's not the superintendent. I'm not a part of this package. This package is for everyone else. Mine is different. It's just it's a different animal. It's done totally by the board. This what I would say to you, and I'm going to go back to leadership matters. Okay, so you see our schools. Let's look at our high schools, how big they are, how busy they are. Those administrators, assistant principals, they're working 6 nights a week sometimes. I've done it. It's a huge job. Leadership matters. It matters in the transportation department that someone's setting the routes right. I mentioned earlier IT. It matters that people have the expertise to make sure that we have the equipment and the bandwidth and everything we need, the fiber, in order to have the technology for the kids. Think about child nutrition. There's leadership there. So when we say upper management, we have a CFO, somebody who's over the entire budget. We have someone who's over the entire curriculum to make sure that we have what we need, the instructional materials. So when we think about management, I think we need to also stop and think, well, what if there's no one who actually oversees those things? Parents sometimes, and probably everybody, maybe they've done it themselves or they know someone who always likes to go straight to the top. Well, what if there's no top? How are you going to get anything handled? And so I would just say that leadership does matter. And Steve has mentioned before, we don't just compete with other districts for leadership. We compete with industry. So human resources, how are we going to recruit the teachers in a time of a nationwide teacher shortage? We have to have those leaders who are out there, hitting the pavement and creating agreements with our universities and all of these types of things. And so there's a lot that goes on behind the scenes, and I don't expect that the community would always know that. But I would say, believe there is a lot of work that people are doing in order to make all of this happen. And we've already cut 50 people, and we didn't take one piece of the work away.
Just very quickly, comparable sized companies in private industry, comparable to the size of Fort Bend ISD, are companies like Papa John's, Occidental Petroleum. You see Oxy on the baseball player's arm. That's Occidental Petroleum. And Lazy Boy. And the CEO of Lazy Boy makes $1.6 million to run Lazy Boy. From a Lazy Boy, I'm assuming.
Yeah. Yeah, we're the largest employer in the county, but Dr. Whitbeck is responsible for over 90,000 people when you count all of our staff and all of our students. And so yeah, any kind of comparable package or comparable responsibilities out there in in industry would be a multi-million-dollar package, but also the senior leaders as well. We lost one of our senior leaders just the other day to oil and gas. And so, we do lose staff to industry and, of course, to other school districts. And so the 3% raise that we're talking about is the same amount, same percentage that was given for Katy, Cyfair, and Lamar. Leadership does matter.
And I lied. You guys, I lied. There are 2 more questions.
No,
and then this is going to be
Let's hear it.
We love the engagement, and we appreciate everybody for staying tuned in and sending in these great questions. Christie. It's a lot of names on here. Christie, Catledge, Carol, Stevens. Question is, we've heard how Fort Bend ISD compares to other districts in terms of teachers, sub, bus drivers, paras pay. How does it compare for administrators, especially those not based inside a school?
Yeah, so let me touch on that. It's comparable, okay? But when you think about, the superintendent, okay, so I'll take this on. Christie doesn't have to say anything. Her pay per student is among the lowest in the state. Seriously, it's among the lowest. Now, while she does have the highest salary in the district, again, we're a massive company, okay? But her pay per student is I mean, in the bottom 1% of all superintendents throughout the state. And so, anyway, and the number of students that you have does impact the complexity of the district and all the kind of crazy issues that can come up with employees and students and parents and whatever else. And it's a tough job. And so our pay among senior staff is comparable, to similar sized districts. So yeah.
All right. Our last question of the morning is from our friend Tammy Marino. She says, I'm wondering if teachers who left the district last year were surveyed or exit interviewed at all, and how often salary was part of the reason for their exit. And have you heard from teachers who stayed on, they are feeling about proposed VATRE raises? I'm not sure, Tammy, pardon me, I'm misreading that. Have you heard from teachers about how they're feeling about the VATRE raises, and what about police officers?
So do you want to take the last one, the early part of that question?
The early part on the exit, yes, we do. It is optional. No one's forced to take it, but we do for all employees, not just teachers. And so that is done through our human resources department, and it is tabulated, and we do look at that information. So the number one reason, believe it or not, that teachers leave is in Fort Bend, at least as of last year, is promotions. So, and many of you know what's going on in Houston right now. Houston is in its own world with being taken over by the state, and they're being given money to offer exorbitant amount of money. That's my adjective, but a lot more money than anyone else can do, because ours is coming out of enrollment and attendance, right? So we can't just offer someone, here's $100,000, come over here and do this. But so that has made an impact too. But we do look at that, and salary is there. It's not the top ones, but what is happening, and the survey I would point everyone to, and I think it's on a website, is the governor's salary study that he did, and he has a task force to try to keep teachers and to recruit teachers, and in that it was the number one survey, and it was taken way over a lot more people than what we could ever do on an exit. And so that one, compensation was number one. And it's interesting. I've been in this field my whole life since I was a baby teacher teaching first grade. I have never seen or known compensation to always be at the top. And there's multiple surveys out there across the state. And now it is. And my personal opinion is it's post-COVID, and that people saw what working from home was like. They came back exhausted. A lot of them had their foot in the online door and the face-to-face door. It was tough. And so we've just lost a lot of early retirements, things like that. So that would be my answer. Yes, we do look at it. We look at it very closely.
And let me clarify the second part, Steve. I'm sorry. There was a comma that my brain just put in the sentence. And have you heard from teachers who stayed on? How are they feeling about the proposed VATRE raises, and what about police officers?
Yeah, we've I've been out and about. I've talked to as many schools as anybody, maybe as many as 20 since our campaign started. And there's a lot of enthusiasm there from the teachers that this will be impactful. When they see the differentiated pay and they see this change in philosophy, because it's a change in philosophy. We're not just moving the scale up, we're increasing the slope of the scale. And so, that 25-year teacher is going to get a raise of $7,000. I mean, that's a game changing raise. When you're a teacher. And so anyway, the enthusiasm's high. Same with the police officers. We've been trying to increase their compensation, over the past couple of years. And so this would also be a game changer for them. So there's a lot of enthusiasm. It's been well received, but while it's been well received, it doesn't always translate into votes, and we've been encouraging our staff to vote. Educators, by and large, typically don't vote, and so it's unfortunate. But we're in a situation where we're just pointing out, the benefits to folks, and just encouraging people to vote.
I would also add, kind of in full disclosure, I also have been everywhere, it seems like, and lots of positive, but there's also people, just like we had some callers, just exactly like that, who feel like it's not enough. I have heard that many times. And you hear that Chief Ryder believes that the amount for the police officers in total is not enough, that we're going to still need to really look at them closely because the salaries have just really climbed in that field. But it's also true of, as we heard today, many people think it's not enough. So what are we saying? We understand, but it is a huge starting point. So that's the message.
Thank you both. As always, thank you everybody who tuned in to watch, all of you who sent questions. We appreciate it. Early voting starts today. Go vote, go vote, go vote. It ends November 3rd. If you're a purist and you want to vote on Election Day, that is November 7th. You can find all kinds of information at fortbendisd.com/VATRE. Dr. Whitbeck, Steve, always a pleasure. We will see you guys hopefully out and about at the polls, and hopefully we'll have good news November 7th.
And don't hesitate to reach out, because we will clarify at any time. We don't have to have a Facebook Live to give factual information, to clarify any misunderstandings. If you see them on a neighborhood app, a Fort Bend Concerns app, and you wonder, if that doesn't sound right, or I really wonder if that's correct, please ask, because many times there's misinformation, and we're going to tell it like it is, whether it's good or not. We're going to tell you the honest truth.
Yeah, we will, and I will respond to emails, I promise. So send them away. So
he will. That's Stephen, STEVEN.BASSETT at fortbendisd.com. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.